Mornings in 1960s Britain had a rhythm all of their own. And for most children, it began with the familiar battle against the school uniform. You'd pull on those stiff collars that never quite softened, straighten the blazer that felt slightly too heavy, and hope the morning chill didn't creep through as you stepped outside. The walk to school was a mixture of sleepy footsteps and silent rehearsals, because everyone knew the first real moment of the day was NT, the register. It was the uniform check at the gate. One glance from a teacher could tell you whether the morning would go smoothly or not. Back then, uniforms weren't just outfits. They were rules woven into fabric, shaping how you stood, walked, and behaved. And there was one rule in particular that almost every child secretly admitted they hated. To understand why 1960s school uniforms felt so unyielding, you have to picture post-war Britain, a nation determined to rebuild not just its towns, but its values. Schools believed that neatness, structure, and consistency created strong foundations for young people, and the uniform became a symbol of that mission. Appearance was seen as a reflection of character. If a child looked tidy, respectful, and ready to learn, it was assumed they would carry those qualities into adulthood. Teachers carried this mindset with quiet seriousness. A uniform check wasn't a quick glance, it was almost a ritual. Collars had to sit properly, shoes needed a clear shine, and every button was expected to be fastened. Even small details, like hair being neatly kept or socks pulled up correctly, were woven into the school's identity. It's a sharp contrast to today's classrooms, where comfort, choice, and personal expression are given far more space. Modern uniforms, when they're worn at all, tend to be softer, lighter, and far less demanding. Yet back then, those strict rules were considered as essential as the lessons themselves, shaping the expectations that awaited every child as they stepped through the gates each morning. Some of the strictest rules of the 1960s were the ones nobody quite prepared you for. Take the collars for a start. They looked harmless enough on the hanger, but once you buttoned them up, they felt as stiff as cardboard. Every turn of your head produced a quiet scrape, a reminder that comfort wasn't part of the school design. Then there were the shoes. Children learned early that a quick wipe wouldn't do. You were expected to polish them so thoroughly that teachers joked you should be able to see your reflection. And if you couldn't, you'd hear about it. Length checks were another surprise. Skirts were measured against invisible rules, and trousers were inspected to ensure they didn't sag or skim the ground. It created a strange dance outside classrooms, children pulling hems, straightening fabrics, or quietly hoping today wouldn't be the day their outfit was judged wanting. The blazer brought a different challenge altogether. Heavy, warm, and unyielding, it had to be worn in every season. Even on bright summer mornings, you'd feel the weight across your shoulders, the fabric warming faster than the sun itself. And the material had a particular scratchy feel that made you constantly aware of every seam. Badges and patches were governed by their own set of rules. Only authorized ones were allowed, neatly placed and perfectly aligned. And the tie, that tiny strip of fabric, carried enough instructions to fill a booklet. The knot had to sit just right, not too short, not too long, and certainly not loose. Most people today have completely forgotten this next rule, but back then it was part of daily life. Every detail of that uniform was monitored, judged, and expected to meet a standard that felt almost impossibly precise. Uniform rules in the 1960s didn't stop with clothing. They stretched into the small details of how a child presented themselves. Hair, for instance, carried its own expectations. Boys were told to keep it neatly trimmed, never brushing too close to their collar, while girls were encouraged to keep tidy, well-kept styles that stayed in place throughout the school day. These guidelines weren't written on posters, yet everyone understood them, because a teacher's glance could say more than any handbook ever did. Then there were the hand inspections, a quiet ritual many remember vividly. Teachers would look at palms and nails to ensure everything was clean and orderly, a reflection of the belief that personal presentation showed discipline. Shoes, too, had their moment. Before entering assembly or lining up after break, pupils often placed their footwear in straight rows, making it easy for staff to check that everything still looked polished and proper. Socks had their own strange importance. They were expected to be pulled up neatly, never slouching around the ankles. Children would tug at them as they walked, hoping they stayed in place long enough to avoid a reminder. And any attempt at adding a touch of individuality, a colorful ribbon, a decorative pin, or even a different style of hair clip was gently discouraged. Creative additions simply weren't part of the system. For many children, these constant checks created a sense of always being observed, as though every small detail mattered. Yet looking back, people often recall these moments with a kind of reluctant fondness. They were part of growing up in a more orderly Britain, where routines shaped the day and expectations were clear long before you entered the classroom. Of all the rules that shaped school life in the 1960s, there was one that seemed to unite every child in quiet frustration. It didn't matter where you lived or which school you attended. The moment the weather turned warm, you felt its grip. The rule was simple. The blazer stayed on until you were told otherwise. No exceptions, no shortcuts, no slipping it off when a teacher wasn't looking. Even on bright afternoons, when the sun made the playground shimmer, you'd feel that thick fabric clinging to your back, turning a simple walk between lessons into a slow, determined march. Children developed all sorts of hopeful strategies, from flapping the blazer open for a second to breeze, to asking, ever so politely, whether blazers off might be allowed today. But most days, the answer was the same: keep it on. Years later, the memory makes people smile. The collective misery, the whispered complaints, the unspoken bond of shared discomfort. At the time, we hated it, but today, it's one of those memories that instantly takes us back. Looking back now, it's clear that those uniform rules did more than shape our mornings. They shaped us. At the time, we groaned at the routines, rolling our eyes at the endless reminders to straighten collars or tidy our appearance. Yet beneath all those small demands was a quiet lesson in resilience. The daily discipline of getting everything just right taught us how to prepare, how to show up, and how to take pride in the way we presented ourselves. There was also a comforting sense of order woven into it all. In a world that was rapidly changing, the uniform offered stability. Millions of children across Britain followed the same rituals, tugged at the same stiff fabrics, and navigated the same rules. That shared experience created a sense of belonging, a feeling that, even if you didn't realize it then, you were part of something larger than your own school. And as we grew older, those little habits lingered. Being punctual, staying organized, noticing the details, what felt strict at the time became the foundation for how we carried ourselves in the wider world. When you compare those old 1960s uniforms to what children wear today, the difference is remarkable. Modern fabrics are softer, the rules are lighter, and there's far more room for personal comfort and choice. Most schools now prioritize practicality over precision, and the idea of constant checks feels like something from another world. It makes you wonder if today's students had to follow even half of the 1960s rules. How long do you think they'd last? Wait, if you grew up in Old Britain, you'll want to see what I couldn't include in this video. I've posted the deeper story and extra memories on WhatsApp channel. The link is in the description. Join us there. If these memories brought a smile to your face, share your own school uniform stories in the comments, and subscribe for more forgotten British memories. For more of these unbelievable memories, tap the video on your screen. The 1970s stories are something else. Don't forget to subscribe.